Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Devin Shanahan Show. So it is one day before the election. I hope most of you have either already voted or are voting in person tomorrow. I'm guessing that most people who watch this show lean a little right, and most people who lean a little right in this country are voting on election day. At least that's what the polls have shown. So we're going to have a little bit of election prediction today in this video, and we're also going to talk a little bit about what's coming up tomorrow and what we can expect to see, and what states will probably call, what states will be in early, counting early, and what we can learn from that early in the night, and what that will lead to later on after all the absentee ballots are counted later. So let's go on. Let's read the news. 7 Pennsylvania 2016 Trump counties will not count mail-in ballots until day after the election, as Pennsylvania Democrats, including Pennsylvania Attorney General Josh Shapiro, have fought against the Trump administration in order to delay the counting of ballots, with the Supreme Court ruling that ballots arriving up to 3 days after Election Day can be accepted in the state. The GOP may have a surprise for the Democrats. 7 Pennsylvania counties that voted for Trump in 2016 will not count mail-in ballots until the day after the election. So this is interesting. Surprising to, or counter to popular belief and what the Democrats have led you to believe is that mail-in ballots will lean towards Democrats. That's what they've been telling us for the last number of weeks, at least, So, but this right here says that 7 counties in Pennsylvania that lean Trump will not count their ballots until the day after Election Day. That means that in Pennsylvania, mail-in ballots that are being counted a few days after Election Day may actually lean towards Trump. What this means, in part, is that if Donald Trump is winning Pennsylvania tomorrow night, if it looks like he is close, tied, or ahead of Biden tomorrow, then I think we can call Pennsylvania. I think that's exactly what that means. And as most of you know, who've been paying attention to the polls or watching my videos, or paying attention to how the electoral college map and the battleground states are going to play out, if Trump wins Pennsylvania, he has an 80 to 90% chance of winning the election, maybe higher. Let's go on. Officials in Beaver, Cumberland, Franklin, Greene, Juanita, Mercer, and Montour stated that they would need more time to count the ballots because of lack of staffing and resources, NBC News reported. Roughly 150,000 voters in these counties asked for mail-in ballots, state data reveals. Samantha Krebs, a spokesperson for Cumberland County, told CNN, quote, "On Election Day, we will report the poll numbers, but we have 3 days to start canvassing of the mail-in ballot. So we took the opportunity to focus our attention on the election at the polls, and then we will switch gears the next day. It's just a matter of getting the job done, and we are focusing our attention on the polls because they are the most important thing on Election Day." So you can't really argue with that. I mean, I would argue that I think that not knowing the results of the election on Election Day are generally bad. It could lead to people thinking that Biden wins and then later on Trump wins. It could lead to the opposite of that as well. We're here seeing a lot of things that there's going to be rioting in the streets. A lot of people who live in cities and own businesses are already boarding up ahead of time. And I think if you do own a business and you're in an urban area, I think that would be wise, especially if you're in, Washington or like Portland, Seattle, Washington, D.C., New York, Chicago, any of those cities that have seen widespread rioting after anything going on. I mean, we've seen rioting in Portland and Seattle nonstop pretty much since the George Floyd incident, but it's probably going to pick back up again. I know outside the White House, they're putting up a non-scalable wall because apparently Antifa and Black Lives Matter plans on effectively rioting outside the White House, and there's been talks that they're going to try to storm the White House, which would be absolutely absurd. I hope that does not happen, but you never know. So, I mean, yeah, this is what we're going to see in Pennsylvania. That, I mean, like I said, contrary to popular belief, if these mail-in ballots could swing the election towards Donald Trump's side, it could be another red wave. So if we see him up tomorrow night in Pennsylvania, I think it means that he's going to win the election in Pennsylvania. So let's go on. The Atlantic writer claims shops are boarding up ahead of election because of Trump. Ann Applebaum, staff writer for The Atlantic, claimed on Sunday that businesses in major cities across the U.S. are boarding up their windows ahead of the election days because of President Donald Trump. Applebaum fired off her take on Twitter and garnered more than 32,000 likes and nearly 10,000 retweets in the post within 24 hours. Quote, "When conservatives celebrated Trump's election victory 4 years ago, did they know that in 2020 we would board up shops, prepare for riots, and the arrival of militias? Game outweighs he might steal the election. Protest aggressive vote suppression. This is what he has done to America, Applebottom said. Plus, gum up the Postal Service, incite supporters to violence. Everything that she has just said is false. The U.S. Postal Service themselves came out a few months ago, and they said that they have enough funding to do everything that they need to do throughout the end of the year. All this hubbub about the Postal Service is completely false. It's lies. It's the Democratic Party posturing lies to make Donald Trump look bad. They want to make him look like some sort of fascist and some sort of authoritarian figure, when in fact, the Democrats are the ones who want to strip your First Amendment rights. They want to strip your Second Amendment rights, your Fourth, your Fifth. They want to get rid of all your rights, and they want to control you. They want to tax you. They want to make you reliant on the government. They want socialized medicine, and no, you cannot keep your doctor. That was the lie of the century by Barack Obama. They in fact are the party of authoritarianism. They're no longer the party of science, and they're no longer the party of the people. And that's pretty obvious if you look at what they're pushing. If they don't get their way, they're going to pack the Supreme Court so that they can get their way. They're going to find some way around the amendment process and try to subvert the Electoral College and get rid of it so that they can win every single election from here on out. If they take power, this is what they will do. I firmly believe so. Let's go on. Many of the users interacting with Applebaum's tweet pointed out that despite her claim, the vast majority of mob violence over the summer leading up to the election has been associated with left-wing groups such as Antifa and Black Lives Matter. That is correct. I would say that at least 99%, probably closer to 100% of the violence has been by Black Lives Matter and Antifa. Anyone who is paying attention at all and is not living under a rock knows this. Ben Shapiro replied to the tweet. 1. Shops are being boarded up in preparation for Democrats rioting. 2. Democrats are gaming out ways of taking the White House. See John Podesta. 3. Democrats are already claiming if he wins, it's because of phantom voter suppression. That is an interesting word there, phantom voter suppression. That is because voter suppression is not going on. The Democrats claim that, Donald Trump muddying up, or so they say, muddying up the Postal Service is voter suppression. No, it's not. You see images on Twitter of people saying, oh, look at all these blue Postal Service boxes that are being taken down. And then you go and you get a reliable source that has actually talked and reached out to the Postal Service as to why these are being taken down, and it's because no one's using them. The U.S. Postal Service has been declining, and the number of people using it has declined year after year after year. It's because of things like UPS, FedEx, Amazon, all these companies that are willing to ship you things cheaper, faster, and more reliably. The U.S. Postal Service, if you've had any long-standing interaction with them, you know that they are unreliable. Their stuff does not show up when they say it's going to show up. If it gets lost, you're screwed. Now, granted, it's kind of cheap, but they also run on a deficit every single year and cost the taxpayers millions of dollars. Unfortunately, or maybe not unfortunately, maybe it's a good thing. I don't know. I haven't thought about it too much, but the Postal Service is part of the federal powers granted to the federal government under the Constitution, Article 1, Section 8. They have the ability to provide for a post office. But yeah, it's all hype, right? And the other thing you're hearing about voter suppression is the Democrats saying that the Republicans are trying to limit votes by essentially saying that late votes should not count, which they should not. Late votes should absolutely not count. These are adults. Anyone who's voting should be over the age of 18. That is an adult. Anyone over the age of 18, if they do not know how to look at their ballot, their mail-in ballot, and fill in the bubbles correctly and follow the instructions and get it in on time or postmark it on time, then they do not deserve to be voting. We do not need to treat these people like children who cannot simply fill out their mail-in ballot and get it to the post office on time. Are you kidding me? And if you can't get it there on time, well, there are consequences for being late. Anyone who's been through any level of grade school in this country knows that there are consequences for being late. When you were in high school or grade school or college, if you turned in an assignment late, what happened typically? Typically, it would either not be accepted, or if you were lucky, it would be accepted for a lower score. There are consequences for being late. People should know this. Let's go on. CBS News poll article today, an article about a poll that they did, pretty much says that the only thing that Donald Trump needs to win is for Republicans to vote. And I'm going to say to CBS News, why would you think Republicans would not vote? Have you seen his rallies? He had a rally yesterday in Pennsylvania, 57,000 people. Republicans historically have always come out to vote. It's the Democrats who do not come out to vote. There are more Democrats in this country than Republicans, by far. There are a lot of youth in this country who are Democrats. They do not come out to vote. They don't care. They get all hyped up. They get all rowdy, but then they never follow through and never come out to vote. And that is the reason that Republicans win most elections. I think everybody should vote. But I think this is insane for CBS News to pretty much say, the headline should read, all Trump needs to do to win is to have his voters vote. Let's read the article. Joe Biden heads into Election Day, preferred by voters who have already cast their ballots early. President Trump has a lead amongst those who plan to show up on November 3rd. So will Biden's lead hold up? If we trot out the old race analogy, Biden has a lead, but we still don't know how long the track is. We need to see how big that Election Day vote will be. So we took our baseline state model estimates from our initial polling, which sums up to Biden holding an Electoral College lead, leading and heading into Election Day, and also estimated what it would take for each candidate to ultimately win. We estimate that our polling, that Mr. Trump is doing on average over 30% points better among likely Election Day voters than early voters. We know that the approximate size of the early vote so far, and we vary the potential size of Election Day vote to explore two scenarios. As you can see here, 66 of Democrats have already voted, and 27% of them plan to vote on Election Day. Contrasting that with Donald Trump supporters, only 32% have already voted, and 69% plan to show up on Election Day. In our Republican surge scenario, the size of the Election Day vote is relatively large, so given that these voters break for Trump, it mitigates Biden's early vote edge, and Mr. Trump inches out close wins in enough states to go over 270. But it doesn't take too much for this to break big the other way. If some of the people planning to vote on Tuesday decide not to show up, and the size of the Election Day vote decreases by an average of 3 points from our initial estimate, the net result is pretty dramatic. Given Biden's overall preference leads, nearly all the competitive states either flip to Biden or stay in his column, giving him a comfortable win. Did you catch that first line? Biden, but it does not take too much for this to break the other way. If some people planning to vote on Tuesday decide not to show up, why would you assume that Republicans would not show up? Republicans historically always show up. There were 57,000 people at his rally in Pennsylvania Sunday. Republicans are going to show up. This article also assumes that all the Democrats who have already voted by mail or voted early voted for Joe Biden. I do not think that that is true. I've heard a lot of people in my personal life, or a lot of people online, who are saying that they are switching from Democratic to Republican. I have not heard of anyone who is switching the other way. I myself am a registered Democrat because I voted for Bernie Sanders in the Democratic primary. I thought that Bernie Sanders would effectively destroy the Democratic Party, so I voted for him. Some might say that's a little dirty, but that's what I did. So people like me are registered Democrats, but they're obviously going to go out and vote for Trump. What does this mean? This is not factored into CBS. They are assuming that everyone on the Democratic side is already voting. They're also assuming that these early voters, they're assuming that the rest of the voters will show up for Joe Biden. I do not necessarily think that's true. Maybe all the Democrats have already voted. Maybe everyone that has voted for him in early voting or absentee voting, maybe that's it. Maybe that's all he gets. Maybe the other 30% of Democratic voters don't ever come out. Who knows? We'll have to wait until tomorrow to see. But, there's a lot of states that have already seen record turnout. Some states have seen 110% turnout. There's other states, like Ohio, Pennsylvania, that have only seen about 30% of the turnout that they had in 2016. Who knows? We'll have to wait and see tomorrow. Everyone can make a guess, but no one can be for sure. All right, we got an article here from 538, written by Nate Silver. I'm here to remind you that Trump can still win. It's tempting to write this story in the form of narrative fiction. Quote, on a frigid early December morning in Washington, the Supreme Court ruled 5-4 that disputed mail-in ballots in Pennsylvania. Quote, that kind of thing. But given the stakes of the election, I think it's important to be prosaic and sober-minded instead. So let's state a few basic facts. The reasons that President Trump's chances in our forecast are about 10% and not 0. As in 2016, Trump could potentially benefit from the Electoral College. Projected margins in the tipping point states are considerably tighter than the margins in the national popular vote. Yes, this is correct. Joe Biden has seen anywhere from 6 to 9 point lead consistently for the last couple months in the national popular vote. But as any informed American knows, the national popular vote means nothing. Okay, it means something, but not really. All you have to do is win a few key states, and you can win the entire election without the popular vote. There's almost no chance of Donald Trump winning the popular vote, but I give him a pretty good chance of winning the Electoral College. Let's go on. More specifically, Joe Biden's lead in Pennsylvania, the most likely tipping point state according to our forecast, is solid but not spectacular. It's about 5 points in our polling average. Without Pennsylvania, Biden does have some paths to the victory, but there's no one alternative state he can feel especially secure about. If Donald Trump wins Pennsylvania, I believe he will win the election. I'm not going to read the rest of this article, though. Let's get into the map. Let's look at the Electoral College map. We're going to play around with it a little bit, and we'll get into some predictions about what we're going to see tomorrow and what states might be called early and what that might mean for the rest of the states and the rest of the country. So here we go. This is from Real Killer Politics. Any state that is blue, doesn't matter what shade of blue, any state that's blue is for Biden. Any state that's red is for Trump. Right now, with the map filled out as it is, the grays are toss-ups. Biden-Harris has 216, and Trump-Pence has 125. So, Nevada here. I believe that will go blue. Let's change that blue. Texas, red. Florida, I believe, will absolutely go red. There are a lot of Cuban Americans and Venezuelan Americans in Florida, and they do not want socialism. They live through it. It is terrible. They don't want it. I believe Georgia and North Carolina will also go red. My home state, Ohio, is in a dead tie in the polls, and I believe it will go red. Iowa, which I believe also will go red, and there was a very reputable poll coming out of Iowa yesterday that said Donald Trump has a 7-point lead. If Iowa goes red, I expect that Donald Trump will win. Iowa has been historically considered the one state that can predict the rest of the flyover states. If Iowa goes red, I believe that the rest of the flyover states will go red, or most of them, meaning Ohio, Pennsylvania, possibly Michigan, Wisconsin, maybe even Minnesota. I believe Trump will win Arizona. He has been trending very positively there in the polls. And he's also within the margin of error. Now, look at this here. I don't know how these are going to go, so we'll ignore them for now. Nebraska will probably go blue. That's the Omaha district. This Maine will probably go red. 259 to 223. With that left, Donald Trump would need either Pennsylvania or Michigan. Wisconsin and Minnesota will get him to 269, which would be a tie, which would mean that it would go to the House. The House, in the event of breaking a tie, would probably vote in favor of Trump, but they might tie themselves, in which case they would just keep voting until they reach something that is not a tie. But let's look at this. Arizona, Biden's up 0.9. That is well within the margin of error. Florida, Biden's up 1. Georgia, Trump up. Iowa, Trump up. Michigan, Biden's up 5.1. Minnesota, he's up less in Minnesota, which the Democrats have not lost since 1976. Not even Reagan won Minnesota. And Reagan won California. Biden's up 6 in Wisconsin. Trump's up in Texas. Biden is only up 2.9 in Pennsylvania. Trump's up in Ohio. He's up in North Carolina. And Biden is up in Nevada. So, given this right here, Trump needs either Pennsylvania or Michigan if we look at the polls down here. And Real Clear Politics does an average of all the polls. Pennsylvania, Biden's only up 2.9. That is well within the margin of error. If that goes red, we get a 279. I believe these will probably go blue. There's a potential for all of them to go blue, but who knows? See, the issue here is that Pennsylvania is saying that they will not start counting their mail-in votes until a day after the election, and Pennsylvania is clearly one of the most important, if not the most important state in the election. I believe it's the most important state in the election. But who knows? So, to kind of wrap up my predictions, I think that it will be 279 to 259. I think Donald Trump will win, despite what the polls are showing. 538 gives Donald Trump a 10% chance of winning the election. I think it's more of a 50-50, maybe even 60-40, breaking in favor of Trump. Florida, though, is a key state tomorrow. Iowa is also a key state tomorrow. Iowa we will be able to call Iowa early, and if Iowa goes red, I believe that means we can also call Ohio, Georgia, North Carolina, Texas, and maybe even Pennsylvania red. It's certainly a good indicator. Florida, though, will be one of the earliest to count. They will be one of the earliest in. They always are because they count their ballots as they are cast. What this means is that if Florida goes red early on, I think we can. And if Donald Trump blows Biden out of the water in Florida, I think that it will be very indicative of what will happen in Pennsylvania. It will show that the polls are in fact wrong, and that Donald Trump is in fact has a wide lead on election day with silent voters or Republican voters, whatever, Democrats switching to Republican, whatever it may be. But we'll see that early. If it happens vice versa and Biden wins Florida early on, the election is effectively over at that point. So we'll see tomorrow, but you guys hang in there. Remember to get out the vote if you have not already voted. Try to bring your friends, try to bring your family. This election is the most important of our time. I know that we've been saying that historically forever, but it really is. The Democrats, they want to take everything. Like I said earlier, they want to take your first, second, third, fourth, fifth. They want to get rid of all your rights. They want to make you dependent on the government. They want socialized medicine, which does not work. Look at every country in the world. It doesn't work. They want socialism. They want Marxism. They are the party of Marxism. They are the party that supports these riots in the streets. They will do whatever they can. They will pack the Supreme Court. They've already said that. They will pack the Supreme Court, and then they will get rid of the Electoral College by subverting the amendment process. And they will use the Supreme Court to pass through anything that they want, no matter how unconstitutional. So get out and vote. This is extremely important. If you like my videos, remember to like and subscribe. I put out stuff pretty regularly, and I'm also on your favorite podcast provider if you want to listen in the car or something like that. Thank you very much, everybody, and remember to vote.